there's this quiet moment, a realization that a lot of us have, I think.
Hmm.
It's that feeling when the thing you use to unwind a glass of wine, maybe an edible, it just shifts.
Subtly, almost without you noticing.
Exactly. It goes from being something we control, something we choose, to something that feels like it's starting to control us.
That's the handover, isn't it? When the choice stops being a conscious action and becomes more of an unconscious compulsion.
Yes.
And that fundamental shift is really the core of what we're diving into today, using some powerful excerpts from a work called When Substances Take the Driver's Seat by Lunarize.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore these patterns, whether it's alcohol, cannabis, really anything that alters your state with, I think, radical honesty, but also a lot of compassion.
Oh, absolutely. The source is very clear. This isn't about shame or labels.
It's about getting clarity.
Exactly. For you, the learner, think of this as an exploration of self, but without any judgment. We're just looking at patterns to understand where we put our personal power and, maybe more importantly, where we ground our self-trust.
Right. It's about finding the insight that lets you get back in the driver's seat. Okay, so let's get right into this core idea. The author says that when a substance becomes a daily habit, it's never just one drink.
So it's never just the substance itself.
It's something more.
The source defines it as a doorway, a portal, but a very specific kind. It's a doorway into a temporarily relieved version of yourself.
A version that's disconnected from what they call our truest self.
Exactly. And that relief is the bait. Because the behavior isn't random. It's a response to something deeper, an unresolved need.
And that hidden engine underneath pretty much all routine compulsive use is the attempt to avoid feeling something specific.
Avoidance masking itself as relaxation. That's a perfect way to put it.
So if the routine is the tip of the iceberg,
Avoidance is the massive part under the water, driving the whole thing. And the source material here is so helpful because it actually pinpoints the specific emotions people are trying to numb. It boils them down to 4 heavyweights.
let's spend a minute on these because just listing them doesn't do it justice. The 4 are heaviness, disappointment, loneliness, and overwhelm.
Right. And I think the reason it's these 4 is because they are feelings that really sit in the body. You can't just think them away.
Take heaviness. What does that mean exactly?
Well, often it's about obligations, maybe family issues, or just carrying burdens that don't even feel like they're yours. It's that feeling that life is just so much effort.
And a substance offers a quick way to feel lighter.
An immediate psychological lightening.
Exactly.
An overwhelm.
That feels like the classic modern problem, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. The endless demands from work, your phone, just
Yeah.
everything. Your system's constantly running too hot.
So a glass of wine is like hitting the brakes.
It's an instant chemical break on a racing mind. It gives you this false sense of control over all that chaos. You're outsourcing your calm.
And the other 2, disappointment and loneliness, those feel a lot more personal.
They are. Disappointment is often about that gap between the life you have and the life you thought you'd have.
Or feel you should have.
Yes, and that's painful to sit with. And loneliness, well, it isn't always about being physically alone. You could be in a crowded room and feel that sharp, aching disconnection.
So a substance just helps to blunt that sharpness for a little while.
It gives you a synthetic sense of peace.
So the author isn't saying, stop your habit. They're saying, stop the avoidance. Look at the engine.
Which means asking some really tough questions.
What are they?
They're simple, but challenging. Things like, what am I actually escaping from? Which of those 4 feelings am I trying to numb?
And what parts of my life feel so heavy or disappointing that my first impulse is just to check out?
Right. And making that shift, from just observing the behavior, I'm pouring a drink, to analyzing the motivation, I'm pouring a drink because I don't want to feel empty. That's everything.
That's the first step back to agency. #tag the cycle of abuse and eroding self-trust.
So once you see the why, you have to look at the how. How does this cycle keep going?
And the source talks about this automatic shift that happens almost instantly once the substance is in your system.
It's that immediate chemical feedback. Dopamine rises, your mind relaxes, and your body gets the message. This is better than before.
And that's where it gets a little sinister, right? The move to the second drink or the third becomes almost automatic.
You don't consciously decide to cross the line. Your mind just whispers, this is working. More will work better.
And that temporary relief is what sets up the rebound.
This is the crucial insight from the author. The feelings you're running from, they always come back when the high is over. And they often come back more intensely.
Right. You didn't solve the overwhelm. You paused it for a few hours.
And that compounding effect is the trap. You used something to feel less heavy, but now you're back to heavy. Plus you have the physical drag, the fog, and the shame.
Ah, the shit. That's the fuel for the spiral.
Absolutely. If you're already your own worst critic, escaping just makes you feel terrible for escaping. You start breaking those small promises you make to yourself.
I'll only have one tonight.
Or, I'm not going to do this tomorrow. And every time you break one of those promises, the source argues you're slowly draining your energy and, most importantly, eroding your self-trust.
Let's dig into that idea. Eroding self-trust. What does that actually look like for you, the listener?
It's that moment you look in the mirror and you just think, I can't rely on myself. It's when you realize that your intention is weaker than the impulse.
You lose faith in your own willpower.
Exactly. You've outsourced your emotional regulation for so long that you don't trust yourself to handle things on your own. And that's the real long-term damage, far more than the physical side.
That reframes everything. It makes the substance use a symptom of a much deeper crisis of agency.
Which brings us to how the source redefines substance abuse.
It pulls it out of that really dramatic, extreme category.
Right. It's not about hitting rock bottom. The source clarifies the term is literally abuse, abnormal use.
So the line is crossed when the relationship shifts, when it goes from being occasional and intentional
To something you rely on just to feel okay. It's moving from conscious choice into unconscious repetition. That's the abnormal part.
So it's more about functionality than frequency.
Absolutely. The abnormality is relying on an external tool to regulate an internal state that you could be learning to manage yourself. Hashtag, tag, the cost of connection and vibration.
So this cycle doesn't just harm our relationship with ourselves. The source claims it can actually take your connections, too. It changes how we relate to other people.
The impact is profound. And the author focuses on alcohol here, specifically, saying it can shift your internal vibrations so much that you stop resonating with people who aren't drinking.
Okay, vibration is a strong word. For listeners who might not use that term, what does the author really mean by that?
It's about a shift in consciousness and presence. So if you're anchored in conscious presence, you're engaged, you're responsive.
You're fully there.
You're fully there. But if your consciousness is chemically altered, your reactions might be duller or slower or sometimes sharper and more reactive. You're operating from impulse, from ego, not from genuine connection.
So the disconnect happens because one person is fully present and the other isn't. The energies just don't line up.
Precisely. And they've used this really powerful anecdote to illustrate it. A story about a friend who admitted he actively didn't want to hang out with non-drinkers. He'd physically move away from them.
Wow. So it wasn't just a preference.
It was an energetic necessity for him.
Yeah.
He needed to protect that altered state from the challenge of someone else's clear presence.
That really highlights the boundary that substance use can create. Your identity gets tied to that altered state.
And that separation leads to what the source calls a spiritual drop. People think alcohol will make them happier, more free.
But the author argues the opposite.
Yes, that spiritually, it's one of the fastest ways to drop your vibration because it compromises your ability to be fully conscious.
And when consciousness drops,
The responsibility goes right out the window with it. That's why people can become so reactive or aggressive. The person isn't fully there. The substance is acting through the most impulsive parts of the ego.
the substance is in the driver's seat.
Literally.
Okay, so that brings us to other substances. How does this principle of escape versus consciousness apply when we move beyond alcohol? The author shares a really candid story about their history with weed.
A very vulnerable story. They talk about getting a medical marijuana card during a period of deep depression. And at first, the effect felt incredible.
How so?
Focused, energized, social, like they had accessed a new personality with endless energy.
And that's the trap, right? That initial feeling of functionality.
It is. It led to daily use, which they now describe as at least a year of addiction,
Mm-hmm.
but it was all masked by that functional label.
So they were functional,
Yeah.
but their life was still being run by the substance.
The long-term conclusion was that while it helped with the acute depression in the moment, it ended up running their evenings, their energy, their whole emotional life.
It was just another way to escape the depression itself, not heal it.
Exactly. And that experience leads to this crucial distinction the author makes now.
Yeah.
They're anti-escape, but a huge advocate for intention.
Intention is everything.
It's the entire difference between using something to avoid your life versus using something to expand your consciousness.
So we've drawn a line between unconscious avoidance, like daily weed use to numb things, and intentional use, which is where psychedelics come into the discussion.
Yes. When the source talks about ayahuasca or psilocybin, the language changes completely. They aren't called band-aids or escapes, they're called portals.
Tools to transformation.
But only, and this is a big only, when used with extreme intentionality, safely, ceremonially, and with proper guidance.
The bar for safety and intention seems so much higher here. Why is that?
Because the goal isn't distraction, it's expansion. These substances, used that way, can force you to meet yourself, release trauma, access deeper awareness. They don't let you numb things. They often force you into consciousness, sometimes painfully.
So it sounds like your intention determines whether the substance pushes you closer to your truest self or pulls you further away.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
If you come to it saying, I want to escape my pain, you reinforce the cycle. If you come saying, I want to face the root of my pain, it becomes a portal for healing.
But the final warning applies to everything, right?
It's the unifying principle. Doesn't matter if it's wine or guided journey. If it's used unconsciously, compulsively, or as a way to avoid yourself, it's pulling you away from who you truly are.
So after all of this, what does it really mean for you, the listener?
I think the core message is that the question is not about the substance itself. It's not about whether wine is bad or microdosing is good.
No, it's always, always about the nature of the relationship.
The relationship tells you who's in the driver's seat. And the author gives us 3 final questions, kind of a check-in, to help you figure that out with honesty and courage.
Okay, let's go through them so you can reflect on them today. The first one is this supporting your consciousness or is it controlling you?
Second, is it expanding your awareness or is it numbing something you don't want to face? Think back to those 4 heavyweights.
And the last one, is it genuinely part of your healing or is it part of your avoidance?
Answering those honestly really gives you a direct path to reclaiming your agency. Your consciousness is sacred. Your presence is powerful. And the invitation here is just to make sure that your life is lived from a place where you are in the driver's seat.
The insight here is that choice and self-trust are the only real antidotes to this cycle. But if you recognize yourself in these patterns, the action you take doesn't have to be massive.
No, you don't have to quit everything tomorrow.
So that leads to a final thought for you to take away.
Right. If you do see yourself in this pattern of avoidance, what's one simple, non-substance-related choice you could make today? A choice rooted purely in honoring your own presence. Just to signal to yourself that you're taking the wheel back.
It could be anything.
A 5-minute walk instead of reaching for that usual escape. Start small, but start conscious.